I bet that at some point in your life you have felt like you were trying so hard, but it seemed like nothing was happening, like everything was at a standstill. Who here has ever found themselves thinking that maybe their dream was too big, or even impossible? Or maybe they have tried something and, no matter how hard they tried, no one gave them the chance to show what they were capable of? I know how that feels, and I understand that sometimes life puts us in situations that seem hopeless. But, my friends, today I want to tell you something very special that will help you understand how God's timing can be your greatest ally. If you are struggling, trying something big, or even feeling unmotivated, this video will be the little push you need. Let's go? Get ready for a powerful story about faith, patience, and how things change at the right time. I know it can be hard to see the way out when things don't happen the way we imagined. Sometimes we wonder, will this ever work out? Will all my efforts be worth it? I understand you, and I know that there are times when life seems to show no signs of progress, but I want you to know that God's timing is perfect, and sometimes waiting is exactly what we need for our growth. Let's reflect on this together. Let's start with one of the most remarkable stories in the Bible, the story of Joseph. You've probably heard of him. Joseph was Jacob's 11th son, but he stood out among his brothers. He had incredible dreams, where he saw his brothers bowing down to him, and of course, this didn't go down well at all. His brothers, full of envy, sold him into slavery. They abandoned him, and he ended up in Egypt. But Joseph's story doesn't end there. He was bought by Potiphar, an important official of the Pharaoh, and ended up being unjustly accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. It may seem that Joseph's life was destined for failure, but he never lost faith in God. Joseph had to wait for years, going through many trials, until the right moment arrived. However, in the end, Joseph became the second most powerful man in Egypt. He was used by God to save not only his family, but an entire nation during a time of great famine. God's timing was perfect. What seemed like a failure, something meaningless, was actually being used as preparation for something much greater. Many times, we feel like Joseph, going through situations we don't understand and thinking that our struggle is in vain. But what we see from his story is that God's timing is not our timing. Joseph was trained and prepared for something great through his hardships. His timing came when he least expected it, and it was more powerful than anyone could have imagined. Now, let's talk about Abraham, another great example of faith. Abraham was called by God to be the father of a great nation, but there was a problem. He and his wife, Sarah, were very old and could not have children. God made a promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, but Abraham had to wait many years for that promise to be fulfilled. Just imagine, Abraham, already very old, childless, and waiting for something that seemed impossible. He had to trust completely in God's timing, even when everything around him indicated that the promise would not be fulfilled. But Abraham did not give up. He was faithful, even in the face of doubt, and at the right time, God fulfilled the promise. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and through Isaac, Abraham's descendants multiplied, becoming a great nation. I know that Abraham's story is deep and difficult to understand in many ways. Waiting for something so great for so many years can be frustrating and difficult to maintain faith. But Abraham is a clear example that, even when time seems to be against us, God has a greater purpose. God's timing is perfect, and he knows what is best for us. Now let's look at the story of Moses, one of the greatest leaders in history. Moses was called by God to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, but his journey was not easy. He was adopted by an Egyptian family, but when he grew up, he saw the injustice his people suffered and killed an Egyptian. He fled to the desert, where he spent 40 years before receiving God's call to lead the Israelites and lead them to the promised land. Just imagine, Moses, a man with great potential, who spent 40 years in the desert, on the run and seemingly without purpose. But God was preparing Moses all that time. When the right moment came, Moses became the leader of a nation. God's timing was perfect. Sometimes, we feel like Moses, far from the purpose we believe we have, going through periods of anonymity, without seeing a clear purpose. But as we see in the story of Moses, God uses time to shape us, to prepare us for the mission he has for us. The desert was not wasted time for Moses, it was God's time to prepare him for the great mission that was to come. Now, I want to share with you the story of David, who began as a simple shepherd. David was chosen by God to be king of Israel, but the path to the throne was not easy. He was rejected by his father, forgotten by others, and even persecuted by King Saul, who was jealous of him. But, as we saw in David's life, God does not care what people see. God sees the heart. David spent many years on the run and facing difficult situations, but he never lost faith. He knew that God's timing was more important than any obstacle he could face. He continued to trust God, and in due time, he became the king of Israel. David not only became king, but he was one of the greatest kings in the history of Israel, and through him, the lineage of Jesus Christ was established. David's story teaches us that no matter how difficult the path may be and the waiting time may be long, if you trust in God and remain faithful, He will honor you in due time. Another example I want to share with you is that of Paul, one of the greatest apostles in history. Before he was Paul, his name was Saul and he persecuted Christians. He believed he was doing the right thing, but after an encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, his life changed radically. Paul went through years of preparation. He did not start his journey as a great apostle. He went through hardships, persecutions, and imprisonment, but he never gave up. He wrote letters that became books of the Bible, and his work has had an everlasting impact. Paul's transformation was a clear example that even when we feel like we're going nowhere, God has a greater plan. Paul's example shows us that God's timing can be used to transform our lives in unimaginable ways. Even when circumstances seem adverse, God's work in our lives continues to be accomplished. In all of these stories, of Joseph, Abraham, Moses, David, and Paul, we see a clear pattern. God's timing may be very different from our timing, but He always fulfills His promises at just the right time. Each of these men went through hardships, challenges, and times of waiting. Yet in each of these stories, we see how God's timing is perfect, and how each challenge was part of the process of fulfilling His plans. I know that at times you may feel discouraged, that your efforts are being ignored, or that your dream is too far away. But as we've seen, waiting is never in vain. What you are doing now, no matter how invisible it may seem, is preparing you for the great moment that God has in store for your life. So, if you are feeling unmotivated, thinking that nothing you do is bringing results, I want you to remember something very important. God's timing never fails. It may seem like you are stuck in an endless cycle, but, as we saw with Joseph, Abraham, Moses, David and Paul, God is working in your life, even when you cannot see it. Sometimes, we need to go through difficult times so that we can mature and be ready for what He has prepared for us. Each challenge, each moment of waiting, is shaping you for something greater. So, stay strong, keep believing. Believe that your moment will come. You may not yet be seeing the fruits of your effort now, but everything you do in silence, in your daily effort, is not in vain. Like a seed that needs to be planted and cared for in order to grow, your dreams are also being cultivated, even if the soil still seems hard. Remember the story of Paul, who went through so many hardships and persecutions, but in due time he became one of the greatest apostles in history. He could have given up, but he understood that the journey, with all its ups and downs, was shaping him for the mission God had given him. He trusted the process, and in the end, God used him in a powerful way. I know it may be difficult, but I want you to be sure that, just like the great men of the Bible, your moment will come. Victory will come when you least expect it. And, as Isaiah 60 verse 22 teaches us, a little one will become 1,000, and a small one a mighty nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in His time. So, if you are going through difficulties, if you are feeling that your strength is running out, if you are feeling invisible, I want to give you a word of encouragement. Do not give up. God's timing is perfect, and He will surprise you in ways you cannot imagine. He knows what is best for you, and He is working in your heart and in your life right now, even if you cannot see it. So, if you are feeling unmotivated or lost, know that your effort will not be in vain. Keep planting, keep believing, keep trusting. Your great moment is coming, and it will be more incredible than you imagine. Now, tell me in the comments, what is the dream or goal that you are fighting to achieve? I want to know, because I will be here to support you on this journey. Don't give up. Leave your like, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories and tips that will help you stay strong, believe and achieve what you deserve. Remember, your moment will come. Until the next video, everyone, may God bless you all.